If there's one thing that bugs me about YouTube, it's or about people on YouTube and really just content creators in general, but it's mostly a YouTube and like a Twitch thing, is when content creators take advantage of the broken copyright system on these platforms, most often to silence criticism or because they get their feelings hurt. Now, if you're talking about channels that are wholesale re-uploading your content, or let's say freebooting, which is like what Ian Miles Chong does, he steals other people's content and he uploads it unedited and makes money off of it. I would totally support people DMCA copyright striking those people. People are stealing your content wholesale, not transforming it and uploading it, making money off of it. That's what the system's for. Sadly, it gets used for other things. And in this particular video, I've talked about the way, even Netflix of all people is actually pretty good with DMCA strikes. But Warner Brothers, for example, Warner Brothers Chapel Hill, for example, these are companies that in general will take down videos or channels, in particular if they're negative. And this is something I've talked about in the comedian space. Previously, Brenden Shaub, well-known, guy who got famous by being Joe Rogan's friend, well-known copyright abuser, taking down videos in particular that were critical of him. It is an incredibly ego-driven decision. I think he had learned his lesson, but I need to add to the list today. I need to add, a lot of people to the list who apparently have been copyright striking videos that are critical of them. Tim Dillon has a history of doing this. Bad Friends, which is a wildly popular podcast between Bobby Lee and Santino, is now copyright striking videos critical of them. And a lot of fans of these shows are defending it. And I just don't think you can defend this behavior because it is purely ego-driven. So let's talk about the Bad Friends podcast. It's very popular. Santino and Bobby Lee have a lot of back and forths. And in the past week, they had David Spade on. And that particular episode had a lot of commentary around it. There's a lot of commentary around these, California podcast comedians. Most of their shows are dead now. The scene was like really at its peak during the lockdowns. There's very few of these podcasts that are doing anywhere near the numbers that they used to. Guys like Theo Vaughn is still doing very well. Bad Friends is doing decently. But nonetheless, there's a whole commentary community around them. I talk about politics or what's going on in the world. There are channels that talk about them. One of them is called Too Lazy to Try. And he'll often talk about, Andrew Schultz or, whatever's going on in the podcast world, provide commentary on it. Always extremely obviously fair use. Well, now, again, one of the things that I use my platform to do is to stand up for other content creators, whether I'm friendly with them or not. Don't know how Too Lazy to Try feels about me. Dude might totally hate me. It doesn't matter. The Bad Friends podcast people, which is, Santino and Bobby Lee, not only took down one of his videos, but issued him a copyright strike, which is an additional escalation that is unnecessary. So, first of all, Too Lazy to Try, again, if you look at his channel, he provides all sorts of commentary around this community, often utilizing clips from the shows in a fair use fashion to illustrate his points. And you can see I've watched a lot of his videos, so I can honestly say that I am a fan of his content. But he's always, he's talking about people in the community, podcast clips, providing commentary. It's very obviously fair use. Now, when he talks positively about content creators or comedians in this space, coincidentally, he doesn't get copyright strikes. But when he criticizes content creators in this space, coincidentally, he does get copyright strikes. That's why it's obvious that either Santino or Bobby Lee watched the episode, because I know they all watch his channel. Guys like Steve-O have admitted that he watches Too Lazy to Try, and that when Too Lazy to Try criticized Steve-O, it hurt his feelings. And he even I believe he briefly touched on, copyright strikes and fair use and things like that. All of these comedians now have a lot of these popular comedians have kind of dipped their toe into this, I'm a free speech and I'm a free speech absolutist, like Tim Dillon, by the way, who had no problem copyright striking videos who were critical of him. A lot of people also want to say that, well, it's probably just their agency. People use that as an excuse. Many of their hardcore fans will use as an excuse, and sometimes that is the case. For example, Bent Key was an organization that was consistently copyright striking videos. And again, if you feel that your content was used in a way that you deserve the revenue for, you can copyright claim a video. If you want to screw over that content creator, you will issue them a content strike, 3 of which will get their entire channel deleted. The reason I know that these are not copyright strikes from, just some random nameless, faceless organization. Here's Tim Dillon's from a little while back. It's always seems to be on videos that are critical of them. If it was that they had claimed that you use particular content without their permission, then why aren't they striking every video you do, right? It's only the videos that are criticizing them. This particular interview, or video that Too Lazy to Try did, was criticizing Bobby Lee not respecting other people's time by showing up 45 minutes late to his own show and essentially derailing the entire podcast. A very fair criticism. Not only did they copyright strike him, but they said the content was found in entire video. They didn't even bother timestamping the clips that he had used. And it's extremely embarrassing for these guys. This is, you can see it's from Bad Friends. You could say, oh, well, it's probably somebody that just, no, I don't buy that. Because they don't strike down this guy. Too Lazy to Try uses clips from Bad Friends all the time. It just so happened that the video in which he criticized their behavior, he got the copyright strike. Do we all agree? Like, we're not buying this. I'm not buying that this was just some nameless, faceless corporation that accidentally issued a claim. Wrong. They took down a video that was critical of their behavior because they got in their feelings. These are 2 multi-millionaires, by the way, bullying a YouTuber who, I don't mean this I don't mean to say that the guy's not a millionaire. The guy probably makes a couple grand a month if he's lucky on YouTube, but they want to take that down. And this, again, Tim Dillon did it too, where he said, oh, I struck it down because they were using content from my Patreon only show, and that's not okay. Again, Tim, I like you, but you can absolutely still use content that is paywalled and to review it. Why do you think movie reviews exist? Netflix is paywalled, yet there's millions of Netflix show reviews all over the internet. All of these guys, this isn't an episode. Tim Dillon apologizes for trashing his ex-producer. Takedown issue by Tim Dillon. Now, I want to point out the escalation that's important here. As a content creator, people claim content in my videos all the time. Sometimes it's a fair claim, like if it's a clip from somebody, and most of the time it's unfair. Claiming a content doesn't hurt your channel. It just means that they get a small piece of the revenue. But when they choose to escalate it to a strike, they actually hurt your channel. You know, and like this stuff is, whoa, that's a good timed. Oh, this is Santino. So this is Santino's Twitter. So I know he uses Twitter because he retweeted this episode. You know, here, Bobby and or Andrew gave too lazy a copyright strike for criticizing Bobby's unprofessionalism. Maybe Bobby would have stood up for himself against Carlos, Brenden, and or Kalila if he had done it while hiding safely from his computer screen. This kind of stuff is what I hate. These guys got famous because of YouTube. They got, you know, Brenden Shaub, who got hit in the head for a career. You know, he was suing YouTubers at the time. All of these guys have done it. Brenden Shaub was suing YouTubers for criticizing him. Tim Dillon has, you know, hopefully he's issued an apology for this and he's changed his mind. But here we go again with Andrew Santino and Bobby Lee, who I'm not even sure is on Twitter or not. They're happy to use YouTube to get famous and have their podcast hosts. They talk about being, you know, Tim Dillon calls himself a free speech absolutist. Santino and Bobby Lee like to talk about how they're against censorship. And they're fine copyright striking channels that criticize them. It would already be kind of a bitch move for millionaires to claim revenue. But it's a whole nother level of cowardice to strike down a video, to hurt a YouTuber channel, someone who's on the come up, someone who's just, by the way, again, following the rules of fair use quite easily. You know, you can go and look at this video about Tim Dillon and his copyright strikes. But, you know, today I'm talking about bad friends and, you know, they're cowardly. Again, it's a strike, not just a, hey, take this down or use a little bit too much of my footage, so I'm going to claim the revenue. They're screwing this guy's channel over. And as somebody who has been YouTubing for 12 years now, 15 years now, I know that I mean, it is my belief that when you carry strikes on your channel, that YouTube suppresses it. They're worried about this guy who makes a video, I don't know, every couple of days, right? Here, he hasn't made a video in a week. They're worried about some guy who's just using a George Costanza avatar and commentating on the community. They're striking down his videos. It's really, really sad. And I really hope, you know, someone can get to Bobby Lee or Santino and convince them that, like, you know, to stop being little baby bitches. I don't know what else to say. But the fact that you ripped down a video, so he had a video here, so it must have been, you know, maybe a few days ago, but now they take it down. It's truly, it's really, really sad. It's rich people acting like they're above criticism and acting out, abusing the copyright system, forgetting what it was like when they were coming up and they were criticizing people. And you just hate to see it. These people end up showing you who they really are. And it's all a facade in most cases.